The hall was wide and bright with walls that rose high like towers of metal and glass. Rows of seats filled with many alien students of different shapes and colors, some with scales and some with fur, some with long thin arms, and some with heavy armor like skin. And in the center was a clear space, where lessons were always given. But today the air felt heavy and strange, as if something dangerous was waiting. The alien lecturer entered slowly, his tall frame covered in dark robes that shimmered with faint lights, his eyes sharp and cold, his voice carried across the hall with power. He said, "Today is not a normal lesson. Today you will face something real. Today you will learn the truth about fear, about power, about survival." And his words made many students shift in their seats and whisper nervously to each other. With a wave of his long hand, the lecturer gave a signal, and heavy metal doors at the side of the hall began to open. The grinding sound of gears filled the room like thunder. The floor trembled as if warning of what was about to come. And from the darkness behind the gate came a sound that made every heart in the room beat faster. A low growl, deep and rough, like stones breaking under fire. The students leaned forward in shock as the creature stepped into the light, its body large and full of muscle, covered in black hide that shone like wet stone, claws long and sharp dragging across the floor, leaving deep lines in the smooth surface, its eyes glowing like burning coals, its teeth long and dripping with thick saliva. It moved slowly, but each step carried the weight of danger. It was a predator bred for hunting and killing. Fear spread quickly among the students. Wings trembled, tails shook, voices rose in panic. Some pulled small defense shields from their belts. Others whispered prayers to their home gods. A few pressed close together as if numbers could protect them. The smell of fear filled the air, sharp and bitter. The predator sniffed as if enjoying the scent, and let out a roar that shook the walls and made the lights above flicker. The lecturer smiled, his sharp teeth showing, his voice calm as he said, "This is the lesson. This beast has ended soldiers and guards. Whole groups have fallen under its claws. But you will see today what courage means. You will see what weakness means." He folded his arms and waited as if watching a show he had already seen many times before. Among the many students sat one who did not move with fear. The human, simple in appearance compared to the others. No scales, no armor, no claws, no wings. Only soft skin and plain eyes. Yet he sat calm, leaning forward slightly as the predator growled and circled the hall. The human did not tremble. He did not draw a weapon. He did not pray. He only watched with quiet interest, as if the whole scene was something less than he expected. The predator locked its glowing eyes on the rows of students. Its body crouched low, ready to spring. Every alien heart froze. Many prepared to scream. And yet in the silence that followed, one voice spoke clear and calm. It was the human, and he asked in simple words that cut through the panic, "Is that your pet?" For a moment nothing moved. The sound of the words echoed in the hall. The students stared in shock, their fear broken by confusion. Even the predator stopped its growl and tilted its head as if uncertain of what it had just heard. The lecturer's smile froze on his face. He looked at the human with sharp surprise. The silence stretched longer. The predator blinked once and lowered its head closer to the ground, as if studying the strange small figure who dared to speak to it without fear. The alien students whispered in disbelief. They asked if the human had lost his mind. They asked if he wanted to die. They asked if he understood what this creature was. But the human only leaned back in his seat, as if waiting for an answer that no one else dared to give. The lecturer's voice returned, harsher now. He said, "This is no pet. This is a weapon. This is death itself. This is the destroyer of worlds. It will show you what it means to face true power." But even as he spoke, the predator did not leap. It did not strike. It only kept its glowing eyes on the human, as if something in that calm voice had changed the rhythm of its hunger. The alien students felt the air grow heavy once more, but this time their fear mixed with a strange new feeling, a question forming in their minds. Why was the human not afraid? Why did the beast hesitate? Why did the simple words of a small, fragile being change the silence of the hall? The first moment of the test had begun, but the true lesson had already shifted. The hall that was filled with fear was now filled with suspense. The students did not know if they were about to see the human torn apart, or if they were about to witness something none of them could explain. The predator moved with slow steps across the polished floor. Its claws scraped like knives on glass, leaving deep marks behind. Each sound echoed in the wide hall, and the alien students shook with fear. Some covered their ears, others clutched their shields, and many whispered in terror. The beast's breath came in heavy waves, fogging the air with heat. Its glowing eyes burned red, fixed on the crowd, searching for the weakest to strike first. The alien lecturer watched with pride. His tall frame was still, his robes shining faintly in the dim lights above. To him, this was more than a lesson. It was a performance, a demonstration of control. He wanted his students to feel powerless. He wanted them to know that knowledge meant nothing without fear. He raised his hand, and the beast stopped, crouching low as though waiting for the signal to attack. The students leaned back in their seats. Some tried to rise, but their legs shook too much to carry them. A few clung to each other, their voices trembling in prayer to distant gods. One student, a scaled creature with 6 bright eyes, whispered that no one could survive. Another, a feathered being with long wings folded tight, said they should run. Yet the lecturer gave no escape. The doors were sealed. And then, in the middle of the silence, one voice spoke again. The human. His tone was calm, almost amused. "You said it's not a pet. Then why does it wait for your signal?" His words hung in the air, bold and unshaken. The alien students turned toward him in shock. They could not believe anyone would dare to speak so lightly when death stood so close. The lecturer's eyes narrowed. He did not like the interruption. His voice rose like a blade. "It waits because it is trained to kill when I allow it. Do not mistake this for kindness. When I command it, there will be no mercy." He gestured with his hand, and the beast growled, lowering its massive head, saliva dripping from its long jaws. The human stood slowly. He did not rush. He stretched his arms as if waking from rest, then took one step forward. Every eye followed him, wide with disbelief. The alien beside him hissed in warning, grabbing his sleeve, begging him to sit. But the human shook free, his face steady. The predator focused on him now. Its red eyes locked on the small figure. Its muscles rippled under dark hide. Its claws tapped the floor like drums of war. The students gasped. They thought the human had lost his mind. They waited for blood to spill. But the human tilted his head slightly and spoke again. His voice was gentle, almost playful. "You act tough, don't you? But I think you're just curious." The hall fell into silence. The predator froze mid-step, its head tilted, mirroring the human's movement. The glowing eyes blinked once, then narrowed again. It growled low, but not as fierce as before. The sound was more uncertain now, more like a question than a threat. The lecturer's smile faltered. He expected screams. He expected panic. He expected blood. But the human's calm tone had shifted the rhythm. The predator's movement slowed, and its steps were no longer aimed at random prey. It stalked only the human now, as if drawn into a strange game. Step by step, the beast circled. Its tail lashed against the floor, thudding like a heavy drum. It moved closer, its shadow swallowing the human. The students held their breath. They had never seen anything like this. Usually the beast attacked at once, without thought, but now it moved with caution, as if trying to understand the small creature that stood unarmed before it. The lecturer spoke again, his voice sharp with command. "Strike him down. End this farce." He waved his hand, expecting instant obedience. The predator lunged, muscles exploding with power. Its roar thundered through the hall, shaking walls and rattling glass. Students screamed, some dove behind seats, others curled on the floor. The beast covered the distance in one bound, claws stretched wide, jaws open like a cavern of blades. But the human did not run. He did not scream. Instead, he shifted his body slightly, one step to the side, calm as a flowing stream. The predator landed with a crash, claws slashing the empty air where he had been. The floor cracked under the force. Sparks flew from metal panels. The human looked down at the shattered tiles, then back at the predator, and gave a small smile. Fast, but not fast enough. The alien students stared in disbelief. None of them could understand what they were seeing. How could a fragile human move so calmly before death? How could he treat the most feared beast of the lecturer's collection as if it were nothing more than a test? The predator roared again, its frustration rising. It slashed its claws across the floor, sparks lighting the air, and turned for another strike. This time the human moved backward, weaving between broken seats and scattered debris. He was not running, only walking, always one step ahead, always calm. The alien students whispered furiously among themselves. Some said the human must know secret combat skills. Others said he must have hidden weapons. A few began to wonder if humans were not as weak as the galaxy believed. The lecturer scowled, his pride wounded. He shouted commands, but the predator no longer attacked blindly. It slowed again, circling, its eyes never leaving the human. The bond of control seemed to slip, replaced by something else, something the lecturer did not understand. The hall became a stage of silence and tension. The predator circled like a storm. The human walked steady as stone, and the aliens held their breath in terror and awe. Every second stretched long, every movement heavy with meaning. The human stopped finally. He placed his hands on his sides, standing tall despite his small frame. He looked at the predator as though looking into a mirror. "You're not my enemy," he said softly. "You just don't want to be treated like a tool." The predator growled again, low and deep, but it did not attack. Its muscles stayed tense, its claws dug into the floor, but its eyes no longer burned with only hunger. Something else was there. Recognition. The student shivered. They had never seen the beast hesitate. They had never seen it listen. They could not decide which was more frightening, the predator's power or the human's calm. The lecturer raised his voice, trying to break the spell. "This means nothing. The creature plays with him, like prey before the kill. You will see. The end is coming." But in the silence of the hall, his words sounded hollow. The alien students were no longer sure. Something unseen had shifted. The predator was not only stalking, it was thinking. And at the center of it all, the human stood like a quiet flame, drawing the beast closer, step by step, into a lesson that belonged not to the lecturer, but to him. The predator's heavy breath filled the air. Its chest rose and fell like a bellows, and each exhale came with the smell of raw meat and iron. The alien students kept their distance, pressed into corners, trembling behind seats, their eyes wide with terror. The hall was no longer a classroom. It had become a cage, and every one of them was trapped inside with a monster. Yet the human stood in the center, his figure small compared to the beast, but his stance was steady. He did not shake. He did not stumble. His eyes were locked on the predator with a strange mixture of calm and curiosity. He looked at it as though it were not a killer, but a puzzle waiting to be solved. The lecturer's voice cut across the silence. "You see now what it means to face death. There's no escape. There's no chance. This is the fate of the weak." He raised his long hand again, signaling the beast to attack. The predator growled, the sound vibrating the walls, and crouched low to spring. Its muscles coiled tight, like steel wires ready to snap. The alien students gasped, expecting blood, but the human did something none of them could have imagined. He raised his hand slowly and spoke in a calm voice. "Easy now. No need to act tough." The words were simple. They were spoken as if he were speaking to a pet dog or a restless horse. And the strangest thing happened. The predator froze. Its eyes blinked, its growl faded into a confused rumble, and for one moment it hesitated. Gasps filled the hall. No alien had ever spoken to the predator like that. Warriors had screamed orders. Scientists had used shock prods. The lecturer had given sharp commands. But no one had ever spoken as though the beast were a living thing with a mind of its own. The human took one step forward. His shoes echoed against the cracked floor. The predator's head tilted slightly, watching his movement, claws still sunk into the tiles. The air grew tighter, heavier, as though the entire room held its breath. The lecturer frowned. He did not like what he was seeing. He barked out another order. "Strike him. Tear him apart." His voice was sharper, louder now, filled with frustration. The predator let out a roar, but even as it lunged again, the human did not move in panic. He sidestepped, smooth and controlled, letting the beast crash into the ground where he had been standing just a moment before. Shards of broken tiles flew into the air. Sparks danced from the impact. The human turned calmly, his eyes never leaving the predator. "You're strong," he said softly, But strength isn't everything. The beast growled again, shaking its massive head. Its glowing eyes narrowed on him once more, but the rage was not the same as before. There was something else now. Frustration, curiosity, confusion. The human reached down suddenly, gripping a broken piece of a chair. He lifted the wooden leg like a simple staff, spinning it once in his hand before planting it firmly against the floor. His stance was not one of fear but of readiness. The alien students could not believe what they were seeing. A fragile human, armed with nothing more than a broken chair leg, was standing against the most feared predator in the lecturer's collection. And yet, for reasons none of them understood, the predator did not end him at once. The lecturer's face darkened. His pride was wounded. He had promised a demonstration of power, a lesson in fear, and instead the human was rewriting the script. He slammed his fist against the console at his side. "This is no trick," he snarled. "The beast will break him." But the predator did not move. It crouched low again, circling this time, its tail sweeping across the broken floor, its claws clicking like blades on stone. It stalked the human, not with blind rage but with a strange patience, as if testing him. The human watched carefully, his body shifting slightly with each movement of the predator. His eyes stayed calm, and his breathing steady. "You don't want to fight me," he said. "You just want respect." The students whispered furiously among themselves. They asked each other if they had heard correctly. Did the human think the predator understood him? Did he believe his words carried meaning? It was madness. It had to be madness. And yet, the predator slowed. Its head lowered, its growl softened. It circled closer and closer, but not with the fury of a beast seeking prey. It was studying him. The lecturer shouted again, his voice breaking with anger. "You fool! It does not understand. It is a weapon, a killer. It knows nothing but hunger." The human glanced at him briefly, then turned his gaze back to the predator. "That's where you're wrong," he said quietly. "It knows more than you think." The beast stepped closer, so close that its hot breath washed over the human. Droplets of saliva hit the floor. The human did not flinch. He raised his hand, palm open, slow and steady, and extended it toward the predator's massive head. The students held their breath. Some shut their eyes, unable to watch. Others leaned forward, unable to look away. The predator sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring. It leaned closer, jaws parting just enough to reveal rows of teeth sharp enough to slice steel. Its eyes glowed like twin flames. The human's hand hovered inches from its snout. Then, with a sudden movement, the predator snapped its head forward. Gasps filled the hall, but it did not bite. Instead, it pressed its massive snout against the human's hand, the hot breath washing over his skin. The hall erupted with disbelief. Students shouted, screamed, argued, some saying it was a trick, others saying it was impossible. The lecturer's face twisted with rage. The human stood calm, his hand resting gently against the predator's head. His voice was soft, steady. "See, you're not a monster. You're just tired of being treated like one." The predator let out a low rumble, but it was not a growl of hunger. It was something else, something closer to a purr. The lecturer tried one last time. His voice thundered, "Obey me. Kill him now." The predator lifted its head, turned its eyes toward the lecturer, and for the first time in the memory of anyone present, it did not move. It did not obey. It stood beside the human, silent but defiant. The students were speechless. They could not understand what had just happened. The human, with no weapon, no armor, no power, had done what no alien warrior, no scientist, and no commander could do. He had stopped the predator not with fear, but with calm. The lecturer's hands shook with fury. His lesson had turned against him. His weapon had betrayed him. And the human, small and fragile in appearance, stood now with the predator at his side, a picture that none in the hall would ever forget. The true lesson had begun, and it was no longer the lecturer who was teaching. It was the human. The predator's low rumble filled the wide hall. It was no longer the roar of hunger or the growl of rage. It was a sound the students had never heard before. It was the sound of patience, of waiting, of decision. The human stood calmly, his hand still resting against the beast's massive head. The alien students stared in disbelief, unable to accept what their eyes showed them. The lecturer's expression was twisted with fury. His carefully prepared lesson had collapsed before his eyes. He had planned to terrify the students, to crush their illusions of safety, to show them the truth of power and fear. But now, instead of cowering prey, they were watching something impossible. A human standing unarmed beside the predator as though it were his guardian. The lecturer slammed his hand against the console once more. Sparks shot into the air. His voice thundered. This is not obedience. This is not control. This is weakness disguised as chance. The beast obeys me, not him. He gestured sharply. Attack. Kill him now. The predator turned its glowing eyes toward the lecturer. Its tail lashed against the floor, cracking the tiles. But it did not move forward. It did not obey. It stayed near the human, growling in defiance. The students began to murmur. Some whispered that the human had tamed the beast. Others said the predator had chosen a new master. Fear shifted slowly into awe, though not for the lecturer. The balance of the room was changing. The lecturer's pride could not accept it. With a flick of his wrist, he activated a control embedded in his arm. A shockwave burst from a hidden collar around the predator's neck. Blue sparks surged, burning against its hide. The beast roared in pain, its massive body thrashing as the current ripped through its muscles. The students screamed, covering their ears. The sound was terrible, like metal tearing apart. The human's face hardened. He stepped between the lecturer and the predator, his voice sharp. Stop. Can't you see? You're torturing it. The lecturer sneered. It is a tool. Tools do not feel. They obey. But the predator's roar told a different story. The air shook with its fury. With a violent snap of its jaws, it shattered the collar into pieces, sparks flying across the floor. The energy faded, and silence fell for a heartbeat. Then chaos erupted. The predator charged, not at the human, but at the nearest group of alien students. Desks splintered as its massive claws ripped through rows of seats. Screams echoed as the aliens scattered in panic. Some raised shields, beams of light flashing, but the weapons barely scratched its hide. The hall was filled with the thunder of footsteps and the cries of fear. The lecturer shouted above the noise. Contain it. Use your weapons. But the students were too afraid. They fired blindly, their shots ricocheting off walls, leaving scorch marks, but doing nothing to the predator. The human grabbed the broken chair leg he had planted earlier. He held it like a spear and ran toward the predator. His movements were fast, precise, focused. He did not hesitate. While others fled, he charged straight into the storm. The predator lunged at a scale student pinned against the wall, its jaws open wide. At the last second, the human struck. The chair leg slammed against the predator's snout with a sharp crack. The beast recoiled, snarling, its claws tearing across the floor instead of the student. The alien collapsed, gasping, saved by seconds. Gasps filled the hall. The fragile human had dared to strike the unstoppable predator. The image burned into the minds of everyone present. The predator turned its glowing eyes back to him, enraged but also uncertain. It growled, its tail sweeping across broken debris. The human stood firm, gripping the chair leg tight, his voice steady. You don't want to kill them. You want freedom. The students could not believe what they were hearing. He was speaking to the beast as though it could understand. He was talking to it as though it were more than an animal. The predator roared again, but it did not strike. Instead, it circled him, its steps heavy, its claws dragging across the ruined floor. The human mirrored its movements, never breaking eye contact. Around them, chaos continued. Students ran for cover. Weapons fired in panic. But at the center of it all was this strange dance between predator and man. The lecturer, furious beyond reason, raised his arm once more. He had more commands, more hidden controls. But before he could activate them, the console sparked violently. One of the stray blasts from a student's weapon had hit the system, frying circuits. Smoke rose, filling the air with a bitter scent. His control was gone. The predator's head snapped toward him. The loss of the collar, the pain of the shocks, the endless commands, it all burned inside its mind. For the first time in its existence, it had no chain, and it remembered the source of its suffering. The lecturer stumbled back, real fear flashing in his eyes for the first time. "Stay back," he hissed. "Obey." But the predator advanced, growling low. Its muscles coiled, ready to strike. The students froze, watching in horror. Was this the end of the lecturer? The human moved quickly. He stepped between them, his chair leg raised like a barrier. His voice rang out, calm but firm. "No, not like this. You're free now. Don't waste it on revenge." The hall went silent. The predator stood, towering over him, its jaws inches from his head. The lecturer trembled behind him, too afraid to speak. The predator's breath washed over the human, hot and sharp. Its eyes burned with fury. But then, slowly, it stepped back. Its growl faded. Its head lowered. The students gasped again, louder this time. The beast had listened. The lecturer collapsed into his chair, his pride shattered. He could not speak. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. Everything he had built, every ounce of authority he had claimed, had fallen apart in one moment. The human lowered his makeshift spear and exhaled. He turned to the predator, nodding once. "Good choice." The predator bowed its head slightly, as though acknowledging the words. The chaos in the hall slowed. The students, trembling and wide-eyed, began to realize what they had witnessed. The human had not only survived the predator's fury, he had stopped it, calmed it, and even guided its choice. He had done what no one else could. The hall was filled with whispers now, whispers that would spread beyond those walls. Whispers of the human who stood unarmed against death and did not bend. Whispers of the predator who chose to follow him instead of destroy him. The lecturer's voice finally returned, weak and bitter. This means nothing. It was chance. Nothing more." But no one believed him. The human glanced at him briefly, then looked back at the predator. He reached out again, resting his hand on its head. The beast rumbled softly, not in anger, but in something closer to peace. The chaos was over, but the lesson was far from finished. The hall was still trembling from the chaos. Smoke hung in the air, mixing with the sharp stench of scorched metal and fear. Shattered desks lay in splinters, shields flickered weakly, and alien students crouched low, too afraid to rise. Every eye was fixed on the strange pair at the center of the storm, the predator and the human. The predator loomed, its massive body coiled with restless power. Muscles rippled beneath its dark hide. Its claws scraped against the cracked floor, sending sparks into the air. The glow in its eyes shifted, no longer only red with hunger but burning with confusion and something deeper, something no one could define. The human stood across from it, holding nothing more than a broken chair leg. His shoulders were relaxed, but his stance was steady. His eyes did not waver. His chest rose and fell with calm breaths, each one in rhythm, measured and deliberate. He was not a warrior clad in armor, not a soldier wielding weapons, but at that moment he stood like one. The alien students whispered among themselves, their voices trembling. Some said the human was insane. Others said he had magic. A few dared to believe he had bonded with the predator. But none could deny the truth. He had survived where none should have. The lecturer collapsed at the edge of the hall, glared with fury and disbelief. His voice was sharp, cracking with rage. "Do not be deceived. He is a fragile creature of flesh. One strike, one bite, and he is gone. Beast, finish him." The predator's head turned, its glowing eyes narrowing at the lecturer's command. For a moment it seemed to obey, its body lowering, claws digging into the ground. The air grew heavy as if thunder itself was about to fall. Then the human moved. He stepped forward and slammed the chair leg into the floor. The sound echoed through the hall, like a crack of lightning. His voice was firm, calm but unyielding. "Enough. Look at me, not him." The predator's gaze snapped back to the human. Its growl deepened, vibrating the air. Slowly, it began to circle him, tail swaying like a whip, head low, watching every movement. The human turned with it, never breaking eye contact, his weapon steady at his side. The students leaned forward, terrified yet unable to look away. This was no longer chaos. This was a duel. The predator lunged suddenly, jaws wide, claws slashing. The human shifted sideways, quick and precise. The chair leg struck across the beast's snout, with a sharp crack. The predator recoiled, snarling, but it had not drawn blood. It had only been a test. The human's voice was steady. You're strong. Stronger than anyone here. But strength alone doesn't decide who leads. The predator growled again, pacing, its heavy steps shaking the floor. Then it lunged once more, faster, claws cutting through the air. The human ducked low, rolling aside, the wind of the strike brushing his skin. He came up on one knee, raising the chair leg in a defensive stance. The clash continued, strike after strike, dodge after dodge. The predator attacked with overwhelming power, each blow capable of tearing him apart. But the human moved with speed, always one step away, always calm. Sweat beaded on his brow, but his eyes stayed sharp. The students gasped with every clash. They had never seen anyone last so long against the beast, let alone with nothing but a broken chair leg. What was happening before their eyes felt less like survival and more like a battle for dominance. The predator reared back, roaring, its voice shaking dust from the ceiling. It charged again, but this time the human did not move aside. He stepped forward. With a shout, he drove the chair leg into the ground, blocking the path. The predator's snout struck against it, the impact booming like thunder. For a second, man and beast stood locked, strength against will. The human's voice rose above the roar. You want respect? Earn mine and I'll earn yours. The hall shook with silence. The predator froze, its glowing eyes fixed on the small figure before it. Then, with a sudden snarl, it leapt back, circling once more. It was no longer attacking with blind rage. It was fighting with purpose, as if testing him, as if searching for proof. The lecturer watched, his face pale. He shook his head in disbelief. Impossible. He cannot challenge it. He cannot. His words faded as he saw the truth. The predator was not trying to kill. It was trying to decide. The duel continued. The human struck its snout again, firm but not cruel. The predator roared, but it did not retreat in shame. It lowered its head, circling slower now, its movements more measured. The students whispered again, voices rising with awe. It is listening. It is learning. Finally, the predator stopped. It stood tall, muscles tense, claws curled. Then, in a gesture none had ever seen, it lowered itself slightly, bowing its massive head toward the human. The hall erupted in gasps and shouts. The predator, the unstoppable beast, the destroyer used for fear, had lowered its head in respect. The human lowered his chair leg, his chest rising with slow breaths. He stepped forward, his hand outstretched once more. The predator allowed it. The human rested his palm against its head, his voice soft but strong. We understand each other now. The students were speechless. Some fell silent in awe. Others murmured that this could change everything. The predator had chosen. It had not chosen the lecturer. It had chosen the human. The lecturer's fury boiled over. He staggered to his feet, his voice shrill with desperation. This means nothing. It is a trick of chance. He will not control it. He reached for a hidden device on his belt, one final command. But the predator's head snapped toward him, with a warning growl. Its eyes glowed fiercely. The lecturer froze, his hand trembling. For the first time, he felt fear not of the beast, but of the man who stood beside it. The human turned his gaze to him, calm but sharp. Your lesson is over. Now mine begins. The hall fell silent again. The power had shifted. The lecturer's authority was broken. The predator's loyalty had changed. And the human, fragile in form but unyielding in spirit, had turned fear into respect. The alien students looked at him with new eyes. No longer did they see weakness. No longer did they see fragility. They saw something else, something dangerous in its simplicity. They saw a leader. The predator remained at his side, calm now, its heavy breath steady. The human's hand stayed on its head, the broken chair leg still in his other hand. Around them, the ruins of the hall spoke of the chaos that had passed. But in that moment, there was peace. This was the turning point. The moment where the galaxy's oldest fear, the fear of the predator, had been challenged by something far greater, the courage of a human. And from this moment, nothing would ever be the same. The silence after the clash was thick, heavy as stone. The predator stood motionless, Its head bowed before the human. Its glowing eyes flickered, no longer burning only with rage, but glowing with something deeper, something like recognition. The alien students could not believe what they were seeing. Some rubbed their eyes as though the image were an illusion. Others whispered prayers to their ancestors, afraid they had just witnessed something sacred. The human lowered the broken chair leg to his side. His breathing was steady, his posture relaxed but firm. He reached out slowly, his hand brushing across the predator's thick hide. The beast did not flinch. It leaned into the touch, a low rumble rising from its chest. But it was no longer the growl of a killer. It was closer to a sound of calm, the deep echo of contentment. Gasps spread among the students. A feathered alien with wide golden eyes trembled as she whispered, "It obeys him." Another, with scaled skin and 6 narrow pupils, shook his head in disbelief. "Not obeys. Chooses." The lecturer's face was a mask of fury and fear. His pride, carefully built through years of dominance, had been broken in minutes. He tried to rise again, shouting, "This is nothing but chance. The beast is confused." His voice cracked under the weight of his own panic. It will tear him apart the moment his guard falls. But even as his words echoed across the ruined hall, the predator moved closer to the human. It circled him once, slow and deliberate, then settled at his side. Its massive body lowered to the ground, claws folding inward, head resting near his feet. The gesture was clear. Submission. The alien students erupted in whispers and cries. Some clutched each other in disbelief, others stared in awe. For countless generations, the predator had been a tool of fear, a living weapon used to break spirits. But now, before their very eyes, it had rejected its master and chosen another. And that master was not the powerful lecturer, nor any of the armed soldiers of their world. It was the fragile human who had entered the hall with nothing but calm and courage. The human crouched slowly, resting his hand on the predator's head. His voice was quiet but strong. "You're free now. No chains. No commands. You decide who you are." The predator's rumble grew louder, vibrating through the cracked floor. Its eyes closed briefly, as if savoring the words. The lecturer stumbled back, shaking his head violently. "No, this cannot be. It is my mind." His eyes darted toward the exit. The shattered control console sparked uselessly, smoke rising into the air. There was nothing left for him to command. His empire of fear had crumbled. One student, a tall creature with 4 arms and shimmering silver skin, raised his voice. "Lecturer, the beast is chosen. The lesson belongs to the human now." His words carried power, and other students nodded in agreement. The lecturer roared in frustration, but his voice was drowned out by the predator's growl. The beast rose halfway to its feet, its glowing eyes fixed on him. The threat was clear. The lecturer dared not move closer. The human stood again, resting the broken chair leg against his shoulder. He turned to the students. "You all saw it. Power doesn't come from fear. It comes from respect. Treat someone like a tool, and they'll fight you forever. Treat them like they matter, and they'll stand by your side." His words echoed through the hall, simple and direct, but they carried weight far greater than the lecturer's endless speeches of dominance. The predator rose to its full height once more, towering above everyone. It moved beside the human like a guardian, its heavy steps shaking the ground. But there was no menace in its movements now. Its body language was calm, protective, watchful. The students pulled back as it passed, but their fear was different. It was not the fear of prey before a predator. It was awe, the kind one feels when standing before something new, something that defies the laws of the world they thought they knew. The human walked slowly across the ruined hall, the predator at his side. With each step, the whispers grew louder, whispers of change, whispers of a story that would not stay contained within these walls. A young alien with wings folded tight whispered, "If one human can do this, what are the others like?" Another, voice shaking, replied, "If they can tame predators, they can tame anything, even us." The lecturer heard those whispers, and dread clawed at his heart. His plan had failed not only as a lesson, but as a display of power. Instead, he had revealed the human strength to every witness. His authority crumbled, and in its place rose a dangerous truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not prey. The human stopped near the center of the hall. He turned once more, his hand resting on the predator's shoulder. The beast's glowing eyes scanned the room, but it did not move without him. The connection was undeniable. They were no longer teacher and tool, no longer master and weapon. They were companions. The student sat in stunned silence, waiting for what he would say next. The human's voice was calm, almost gentle. "I didn't come here to fight. I came to learn. But maybe you all needed to learn something too." He paused, glancing down at the predator, then back at the wide, fearful eyes staring at him. Humans don't run from fear. We look it in the eye. And sometimes we make it a friend. The predator let out a deep rumble, low and steady, almost like an agreement. One by one, the students lowered their shields. Some stood, hesitant but braver than before. The fear in their eyes shifted into respect. The lecturer, shaking with rage and humiliation, staggered toward the door. "This isn't over," he hissed. "The council will hear of this. They will crush your kind before it spreads." The human's eyes followed him, calm and steady. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them exactly what happened, and then let them decide if they still believe we are weak." The predator growled again, forcing the lecturer to stumble faster through the ruined doorway. The door closed behind him with a heavy clang, leaving the hall filled only with the echoes of silence and the pounding hearts of those who remained. The students turned back to the human. Some bowed their heads. Others simply stared. None of them would ever forget this day. The predator curled beside the human at last, lowering its massive body to the floor like a loyal guardian. The human sat down as well, leaning the broken chair leg against his knee. He rested his hand once more on the predator's hide. For the first time since the hall doors had opened, the air felt still. The storm had passed. What remained was not terror, but the quiet birth of something new. The bond had formed, and with it, the galaxy had changed forever. The hall was quiet, though it bore the scars of chaos. Shattered seats lay scattered like bones. Smoke curled in thin trails from the ruined control console. Alien students still trembled in their corners, their eyes locked on the sight in the center. The human sitting calmly, with the predator resting at his side. The impossible had already happened, and now silence pressed on them all like a heavy weight. The predator's chest rose and fell in slow rhythm. Its eyes, still glowing faintly, were no longer locked on prey. They were half-closed, calm, as though the storm within it had finally passed. Every movement of the beast seemed tied to the man beside it. The way it breathed, the way it shifted its massive claws, even the way it looked at the students, no longer as food, but as figures beyond its interest. The human rested his hand gently on the predator's head. His eyes were calm, steady, yet sharp with understanding. He looked across the room at the broken students, at their wide, fearful eyes, and at the lecturer who had fled moments earlier. He understood now. The lesson had not gone as planned, but it had revealed something greater. The students began to rise, hesitant at first, their bodies still stiff with terror. A winged student unfolded her feathers slowly, her eyes never leaving the predator. A scaled student flexed his claws nervously, but did not raise them in defense. One by one, the aliens came to their feet, not in rebellion, not in fear, but in respect. The human stood as well. The predator rose beside him, towering, its shadow stretching far across the broken tiles. He did not need to command it. He did not need chains or shocks. It moved because it chose to. It followed because it had decided to. The human's voice broke the silence. "You all came here to learn. You thought today would be about fear, about survival, but you learned something else." He paused, letting the words settle. "Fear breaks things. Respect builds them. You can crush someone with terror, but when you do, you're only building an enemy. Treat someone with respect, and you make an ally." The predator let out a low rumble, almost like a growl of agreement. The sound rolled through the hall, but it was not a warning this time. It was a declaration. The students glanced at one another. They whispered quickly, their voices sharp and filled with energy. Some said the human was dangerous. Others said he was a teacher greater than the lecturer. A few murmured that this was the beginning of something far larger than the lesson they had expected. And deep inside, each of them knew the truth. What they had seen could not be contained in this hall. The story would spread, first to their own people, then to their worlds, and then to the council itself. The doors at the far end of the hall slammed open. The lecturer returned, flanked by guards in gleaming armor. Their weapons glowed with ready charge. His face was pale with anger and shame, but his voice was loud, desperate. "Seize him. End this before it poisons the council." The predator rose instantly, muscles tensing. Its massive body towered above the guards, its growl shaking the air. The guards faltered, their weapons trembling in their hands. They had been trained to obey, but their eyes betrayed their fear. None wanted to take the first step forward. The human raised his hand slowly, calming the predator before it could strike. His eyes locked on the lecturer. "Do you see? Even now they hesitate. Not because of me, because of what you forced them to believe. Fear is brittle. It cracks the moment it's tested. Respect is what endures." The guards looked between the lecturer and the human. Then, one by one, they lowered their weapons. The lecturer screamed in rage, but it was useless. The predator's growl was louder than his orders. The truth was louder still. The human turned away, no longer interested in the lecturer. He looked at the students instead. "You'll remember this. Not because I asked you to, but because you saw it with your own eyes. Today was supposed to teach you that fear makes you strong, but it taught you the opposite. Fear is weak. Respect is power." The students nodded slowly. Some even bowed their heads in silent agreement. The predator lowered its head beside him once more, its glowing eyes calm but watchful. The lecturer staggered back, his pride shattered. His words were nothing but noise now. "The council will never accept this. They will burn your world before they bow to your kind." The human looked at him with steady eyes. His voice was quiet but sharper than any blade. "Then let them try. But remember what you saw today. Remember what bowed to me." The predator rumbled again, its massive head lifting high. The sight alone silenced every voice in the hall. A beast bred for fear had chosen to follow a human. A weapon of terror had bent its will to respect. It was a vision that would echo through history. The guards withdrew slowly, unwilling to fight what they could not defeat. The lecturer was left alone, his face pale and broken. The students ignored him now. Their eyes followed only the human and the predator. The human placed the broken chair leg across his shoulder and walked toward the exit. The predator followed at his side, its heavy steps shaking the ruined hall. The students parted to let them pass, some lowering their heads, others whispering in awe. As the doors opened, light poured into the hall. The human stepped into it without hesitation. The predator walked beside him, calm and silent. Together, they crossed the threshold, leaving behind the ruins of fear and stepping into the dawn of something new. The students remained, silent and still. One spoke finally, his voice hushed but certain. "The council will laugh, but when they laugh, they will remember this." Another answered softly, "And when they remember, they will be afraid. Not of the predator, of the human." The hall emptied slowly, but the whispers did not stop. They spread like fire, racing along corridors, carried on every tongue. By the time the sun rose on the world beyond, the story had already begun to spread. The alien lecturer had tried to teach that fear was the greatest weapon. Instead, he had taught them the opposite. The lesson had been reversed. The galaxy would not forget. And somewhere deep within, the predator walked at the human's side, silent and loyal, not as a tool, not as a monster, but as proof of something greater. Proof that respect could tame what fear never could.